Hey, Rich, welcome to 700 Club Canada.
Oh, Lori, so honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're now live on video, my friend. You're no more podcasting for today.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Um,
Let me ask you. Yeah, let me ask you about, take us back a little bit about, tell us about your faith story and how you came to follow Jesus.
thanks so much. I feel like I have the quintessential Canadian Christian faith story. We went to church as a kid. It wasn't quite just Christmas and Easter, but if there was any excuse not to go, we wouldn't go. If it was too nice out, if it was too bad out, if there was hockey on, if we stayed up too late from hockey, that kind of thing. But my parents moved quite a bit when I was a kid, and because my dad was upwardly mobile, it was a good thing. And in one of those moves, right before one of those moves, the minister at our church actually had an affair, and which was a big kind of schmozzle in my family. Wow, big kind of change. And when we moved to the next community, my parents said, we need to take a little more time to get to know the church that we're going to. And so we ended up at a great Presbyterian church, Shane Presbyterian Church in Stony Creek, Ontario. And it was there that God got a hold of not only my life, but our whole family's life. And that really started my faith journey, kind of late middle school into high school. And from there, all through high school and then ultimately through college and beyond, God really worked in my life and really gave me a heart for reaching people, to see people who are far from God get connected with Him.
Well, you know what? Thanks for sharing that story. I think there's so many viewers probably watching that can maybe relate to that. And you know what? You can run, but you cannot hide from the love of God, right? Like He went after your family. That's so good. Well, we're talking about church today, and you know what? Messy things happen in church, as you just mentioned. And we got a messy time right now with COVID. I mean, this is kind of crazy for the whole world. But what are your thoughts, Rich? You talk to people, to leaders, specifically church leaders all over the world. So I'm sure you've got some insight here about to open or not to open. I mean, maybe some people have moved past that, but what are your thoughts about COVID and the what the church is facing right now?
Yeah, I think all of us, even if we've begun to do in-person services already, we're still very much in the reopening phase. We still very much have this pressure of really living with COVID and understanding kind of its impact on our churches. I have a deep respect for church leaders. One of the things I always say is I'm really trying to orient my life around helping church leaders. And there really is a wide spectrum of how we have responded to this crisis. But my encouragement for church leaders is to really wrestle with and think through, hey, what is God calling you to do in your context, in your local community? I think one of the things we've learned in COVID is that there is nothing more local than the local church. Our churches have to respond to what's happening in our community, and how do we encourage the people in our community to connect with Christ, to connect with His message. So I have no problem with churches that have opened already. I also respect those churches that are waiting to open. I understand that. In fact, our church is doing that because we don't want to be the kind of place that we want to be the kind of church that unchurched people love to attend. We want to be the kind of place where people who don't normally attend church come to. And one of the things that we've seen, and we're seeing this all across the country and all across the states, that churches are opening, but frankly, people are just not coming back. They're not comfortable yet. Even in the most open of our communities, we're not seeing that yet. And so I think we all have to wrestle through what are the local dynamics that we're facing, and how do we live out what we believe God's called us to do in that context.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And let's also be clear that when we say open or not open, we're talking about a building. We're not talking about ministry, right? Because I know that your church, I mean, I assume you're at Carrie Newhoff's up in Connexus,
Yeah.
around that. Is that, yeah. And our church Sanctus, I mean, we've taken a really strong online church. What do you think about the online church presence?
Well, I think it's opened up all kinds of new opportunities for people. In my own family, my extended family, we have people who don't normally attend church in my family. And what it's been exciting to see as they've connected with our church for the first time, really consistently, because I think we've upped our game on the digital side. We're a little more digital native than we were a year ago, even though we were doing church online. So I do think it creates a great opportunity for our churches to reach out to people, to create new opportunities. I think it creates easier opportunities for folks who attend church to invite their friends. It's frankly never been easier to click on the
Right.
like, share, comment button. And so I think it's been a great opportunity for many churches.
Well, I'm sure you're seeing around the world too, because you talk to leaders all over the world. Is there creative ways that maybe outside of our, Canadian context or North American context that you're seeing some creative things happen in the church?
Yeah, one of the things that I've been encouraged by is I think we've learned that church is was never about coming to the Sunday show. It was never about just showing up on Sunday to the 90-minute or the 45-minute or the 2 hour. It was never about that. It was always about really the people of God making a difference in a community. And so I've been encouraged to see churches try new forms of outreach, really getting people out of their seats and into the streets to serve in their communities, whether that's serving at a local food bank or whether that's maybe doing some work in their community, actually doing like park cleanups or looking for ways to really give back to their community. There's a friend of mine in Los Angeles at a church called New Story Church, and they, about a year ago, had a strong kind of indication or a strong conviction that they felt like God was calling their church to reach 1% of the Los Angeles County, which is a huge number of people, literally tens of thousands of folks. And at the time, they felt like, wow, that's a crazy vision. Well, then COVID happened, and they switched into a mode where they've been serving meals. They do a drive-through food bank every Saturday at their church. And wouldn't you know, within 2 months of doing that every Saturday, they served 1% of all of Los Angeles had come through their church parking lot. That would have never happened if it wasn't for COVID. And I just love that. There's all kinds of stories that you see like that, where churches are saying, we need to actually serve our communities. We need to get out and make a difference, which I just think is so encouraging in this season.
Man, I am just so thrilled to hear that. Okay, I'm holding on to that. Out of your seats into the streets. There's our slogan moving forward. I agree with you. I think COVID is just like, in a sense, put a bomb into the buildings, not literally, but it's blowing the people out into the communities and out into the streets. And I actually have felt that for some time, isn't that the Great Commission? Isn't that our calling? Isn't that our purpose anyway? So thank you for sharing that. That's just amazing. I hope that really inspires our viewers as they're watching. Like, instead of sitting home and thinking, gee, I can't show up to church for an hour this week, maybe I can be the church. What do you see as opportunities for the church and believers then at this time, just based on what you're saying?
Well, again, I think it comes back to serving in our communities. I think I would be asking, and we've been asking even as our small group, what can we do as a small group to serve our community? What can we do as a church? Our church at Connexus, just last weekend, we put together a kind of meal packing day where we were packing meals for our local food banks and actually for some Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario. Our hope was to pack 15,000 meals in that day, but we ended up packing 26,000. Wow, it was an incredible day to just
Wow.
serve back and give back to the community. I think great opportunities for us in this season.
That's amazing, Rich. That is so inspiring. Like, wow, I'm excited. I'm going to start thinking about some of those things myself. Our small group, our Connect group meets tonight, so we got to get talking about that. Before I let you go, tell me, what do you think God is doing in the church in Canada?
Well, I think this is a great season for the church. I think in the darkest hour, the light of the church shines the brightest. I'm encouraged by churches that are leaning in and saying, hey, what can we do to make a difference in our community? They're saying, hey, let's look at the needs of the communities around us and lean in and make a difference there. And so I really do think this is a great season. I would encourage church leaders to not see this as a sad season, but as a season where God may be pushing us to do something different in our communities at this time.
Oh, I'm so with you, Rich. I just think out of the seats into the streets. You taught us some good stuff today. Your recent book, Church Growth Flywheel. Tell us a little bit about, just before I let you go here, how that might help churches or leaders or even, believers that are watching today.
Oh, thanks so much. As this came out of a conviction of wanting to help churches reach more people, and so on our podcast, we've interviewed over 500 church leaders from some of the fastest growing churches across North America, and this book really condenses those lessons. But it really comes down to this: what we see, the difference between stagnated churches and growing churches. Growing churches have found ways to encourage their people consistently to invite their friends, and that's really what growing churches do on a regular basis is to create ways, easy ways for people to invite their friends. And so this book really just helps churches walk through what can we do, even in this current season, to help our people invite their friends.
Well, I think I'm inspired by hearing from you, Rich. Thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing to encourage leaders because leaders need a lot of encouragement, right? In a time like this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lori. Thank you for what you do to help really inform the body of Christ, to keep us connected and hearing from such incredible stories from all across the country.
Well, it's my privilege. People can find you at unseminary.com, correct?
Yeah, that's it. Stuff you wish they taught in seminary.
Well, I just graduated from seminary, so I'm sure there's so much more I need to know. But thanks, Rich. I really appreciate what you offer, to the body of Christ. You're truly Canadian. You're inspiring so many people on this tough time. Blessings to you, my friend, and your ministry and your family.
Thanks so much.
Well, up next, you're going to hear an inspiring story about baseball all-star Charlie Blackmon. Watch this.